Orleans. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Hurricane Katrina flooded 80% of New Orleans, destroying the city's infrastructure, displacing most of its residents. A year later, only about half of New Orleans' population of 450,000 people has returned. Many of those unable to come back are poor and African American. In the ravaged, mostly black neighborhood of the Lower Ninth Ward, only 1,000 of the 20,000 people who lived there before Katrina have returned. This has drastically altered the demographics of a city that used to be two-thirds black. Here again, investigative reporter Greg Palast from New Orleans.
My name's Palast, Greg Palast. You can tell by my hat that I'm an investigative reporter. And what you're about to watch is an investigation that I did for a program called Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman. But this is not a crime from the past. It begins 20 years ago with the drowning of New Orleans. But the crime wave continues today. As we're speaking, they've pulled out 129 bodies from the Guadalupe River in central Texas. I'm going to say that we can expect another 100 dead to be removed. It's not an act of nature. It's an act of Trump. It's an act of Elon Musk. And we are going to discuss this crime and its evidence, what happened before and what's happening now and what's going to happen to you next. So stay with me. But in the meantime, I ask you to do two things. Number one, go to gregpalast.com and sign up for our continuing reports of this investigation. The second thing I recommend is that you take some swimming lessons.
Welcome to New Orleans, whose motto is the city that care forgot. In fact, it's a city that everyone forgot.
Our president has been to New Orleans, and a year ago, he made a commitment to Katrina's survivors.
President, as you know, the one-year anniversary of Katrina's coming up, and there are a lot of retrospectives about what went wrong down there last year. Specifically, what has your administration done in the past year to help the folks down there? What remains to be done?
Yeah, thanks. I went to New Orleans and in Jackson Square and made a commitment that we would we'd help the people there recover. I also want the people down there to understand that it's going to take a while to recover. This is a huge storm.
Mr. President, I think people down here know it was a huge storm. Over 500,000 of them fled the hurricane. It's been a full year, and only 170,000, far less than half, have come back. Almost none to their own homes. We flew down to investigate two things. One, why did they have to leave? What really caused the flood? And two, why can't they come back now?
I stayed 3 nights here and 1 night on the bridge. So
You were 3 nights stuck in the flood?
right here. Yep.
And they weren't looking for you?
We had helicopters, but none didn't pass, and at least they passed over us. I'm on the roof holding my shirt out and saying that we had babies back here. It was too hot to put a 2-month and a 4-month baby up on the roof when they already on the second floor.
This is Stephen Smith. Like 127,000 others in this town, he didn't have a car in which to escape, so he was left in the rising waters.
Now, they couldn't swim, and I couldn't either.
He took photos of his neighbors floating by, and later, stranded in the heat on a bridge, he closed the eyes of a man who died of dehydration after giving his grandchildren his last bottle of water.
Put my hand over his forehead and just Slide this towards his eyelids, it just closed.
What kind of evacuation plan would leave 127,000 to sink or swim? It turns out that the Bush administration turned over evacuation planning to a private contractor, IEM, Innovative Emergency Management. I couldn't locate their qualifications, but I did locate their list of donations to the Republican Party. We went to Baton Rouge to ask them a few questions.
These are the offices of Innovative Emergency Management. They're the ones that were paid $500,000 to come up with an emergency evacuation plan for the city of New Orleans before Hurricane Katrina. One problem is, I can't find the plan. So I'm coming here to ask them about it. Their executives refused on several occasions to meet with us. So when I showed up at their office, they would only talk to me from behind a glass wall. By phone.
Did you in fact come up with a plan? Because it says it's urgent to come up with a plan. Did you come? Can you just tell me if you came up with a plan or not? Okay, the question is, can you at least tell me if you have a plan for New Orleans? Yeah, I'm just happy to talk to you one-on-one. You're probably about 12 feet away from me. Or somewhere, you know, I mean, I don't know, are you hiding in this office somewhere? I'm happy to speak to you face to face. We can't find your plan, neither can FEMA, that you were paid $500,000 for it, that at least claimed to here. We can't find this plan. And it's kind of a problem. I guess it's kind of hard to evacuate a city if you can't find the plan itself.
I asked the CEO's assistant if her boss had any experience at all in hurricane evacuation.
I'll tell you what, there's one thing you must know about if you're Madhu's assistant. What is her background prior to this contract in 2004 in evacuation planning for a hurricane?
I think it's right on our website.
There's nothing that shows on her website. It says that she's a wonderful, experienced person, but there's no experience listed at all.
She's got a lot of experience in evacuation planning.
Is there a city?
Planning, that type of
Can you give me a city where she worked on hurricane evacuation planning?
I really don't know that much about her background.
Is it true that, in fact, that she really has no experience in this?
I will give her your information. Okay?
Is it more true that maybe it was helpful that she gave a lot of donations to the Republican Party? Maybe that's the experience?
Yes. Yes. I don't have any idea. You're talking to the wrong person. You asked.
So that's when they called in the guards.
Security has been called. We ask that you please leave the building now.
So quickly, before security gets here, I just want to tell you that this is innovative emergency management, and it's very innovative not to have a plan to manage an emergency.
I decided to look for someone with a little more experience in hurricane evacuation. LSU, Louisiana State University. They're just down the street from IEM. LSU has one hellacious football team. They also have the best team of hurricane experts in the nation. I met with Dr. Ivor Van Herden, Deputy Director of the university's elaborate Center for the Study of Hurricanes. I asked this renowned specialist about the reputation of IEM prior to their getting the $500,000 evacuation exercise contract.
I hadn't heard of them prior to this exercise, no.
The LSU scientists already had an evacuation model, but IEM and FEMA refused to use it.
We had the science. We had really studied this thing. We knew what was going to go wrong. We had an enormous amount of information, right down to mapping where the gas tanks were and pipelines, and public opinion surveys, contamination models for air and for water and different types of chemicals. Science was basically ignored all the way through the process.
The LSU professors warned, for example, that the IEM plan simply made no provision for people, the old, the sick, who couldn't escape in a car. I asked him the consequences of this oversight.
Well, 1,500 of them drowned. That's the bottom line.
Then the professor surprised me by saying that giving us this information put his job at risk.
I wasn't going to let them let those sort of threats shut me down or any of the other sorts of nonsense that went on, because it was so important that we get out what had gone wrong and why.
Apparently, the heat from the university originated with a state official who now works for IEM.
We got a phone call from somebody in the state government who actually now works for IEM, but I don't think that was his plan at the time. And he jumped all over me and said by criticizing their work, I was putting the whole exercise in jeopardy, and if I did it again, I would be banned.
Back in New Orleans, former city councilman Brod Baggert, a lawyer, standing in the gutted wreckage of his own home, did not think kindly of the concealment of Van Heerden's warnings.
Ongoing protection that should have been occurring was done. It was done negligently. Not only wrong, negligently. And not only negligently, but reckless negligence. The kind of negligence for which an individual would be indicted, prosecuted, tried, convicted, and spend their life in jail. Negligence that killed people, lots of people. Reckless negligence that killed human beings. Had old ladies watch the water come up to their nose, over their eyes, and they drowned in houses just like this in this neighborhood because of reckless negligence that's unanswered for.
So now we've discovered why there is no real plan of escape. But that leaves the question, why did the water flood the city? People drowned. The city drowned.
Destroyed house, destroyed house, destroyed house, destroyed house, destroyed house. Every single house on every single block, mile after mile. And it's so big that a television camera, which is the medium with which we communicate in America and the contemporary world, can't get the picture. Yeah, it's a narrow focus. You can't comprehend that mile after mile after mile of residential urban neighborhoods are completely destroyed and remain destroyed.
Destroyed. And this is what it still looks like a year later. But why was it destroyed in the first place? In fact, Hurricane Katrina missed New Orleans, yet the city was swamped. For an answer, Baggert took us to the levees, now being rebuilt.
We're just cleaning up. That's all we're doing, huh?
Really? It's almost finished? No kidding. Boy, is that good news. This is where there was one of the breaches in this levee. I believe the London Avenue Canal levee broke in 3 places. This is what it looks like.
He took me to a neighbor's house near the levee.
So look, you have 3 feet of mud in here. There's a basketball. You know, some children's toys. One day it was somebody's home, the next day it's like a mad monster came through it. The beast.
There's an X on this house. It has a 5 under it. That means that 5 corpses were pulled out of here. 5 people who were killed, and they weren't killed by Katrina. They were killed by this, a levee, which is supposed to protect them from the waters of the Mississippi, and it failed. And they never told the 5 in there that they knew it would fail.
The levees were never built high enough, and we now know that a decision was made to actually build them 1.5 feet lower than they were supposed to be. They were an accident waiting to happen.
Back at LSU, Van Heerden's experts warned the Bush administration about the short levees long before Katrina hit.
I myself briefed many senior federal officials, including somebody from the White House.
But they wouldn't listen. And then, when the levees broke as predicted, the White House withheld this crucial information from the state police at the Emergency Operations Center, where Van Heerden was desperately trying to save lives.
FEMA knew at 11 o'clock on Monday that the levees had breached. At 2 o'clock, they flew over the 17th Street Canal and took video of the breach. By midnight on Monday, the White House knew. But none of us knew until on Tuesday. Monday night, I was at the State Emergency Operations Center, and nobody was aware that the levees had breached. Nobody.
So wait, so the White House wouldn't tell you that the levees had breached?
They didn't tell anybody.
And you're at the emergency center?
Yeah, nobody knew. I mean, the Corps of Engineers knew. FEMA knew. None of us knew. The way we found out was on CNN, you know, on Tuesday, about midday, we found out the city was flooded. That's how most people found out. So, you know, the information was held, just like the information on the levees. The Corps first said the 17th Street Canal had breached. They didn't tell you about any of the others.
Without the warning that the levees had begun to break, evacuation stopped until it was too late. But those that survived, where were they? This city is still half empty.
We'll get back to the second half of our film in a moment. I just want to remind you, if you want to get the continuing reports of this continuing investigation, go to gregpalast.com, sign up for free, or go to my Substack site, which is listed below. Like this film, and if you think that this investigation is important, please consider a small donation to the Palast Investigative Fund, our not-for-profit, nonpartisan foundation. Thank you.
Live through this pain of a broken heart. It ain't easy as I tried.
So we drove up along the bayou in search of the lost tribe of Orleans. Nearly 100 miles from the city, in the no-man's land behind the Exxon oil refinery, we found FEMA's giant trailer park.
All my dreams never made it far.
Pamela Lewis's family is one of 73,000 living in FEMA trailers in Louisiana alone.
I had the privilege, I'll put it like that, I had the honor and the privilege of seeing my best friend body float past me. I had to steal a boat to get my 86 at the time, year-old mother to safety.
For a year, Pamela, who has multiple sclerosis, has been locked behind the barbed wire fence here. There is a free bus, but it goes only to the Walmart.
It is a prison setup. I've never been at the bottom of the barrel before in my life till I came here. And I just really want to go somewhere that I could say, I'm home. I want to get out of here.
I look in your eyes, I don't see a thing. Yes, I know what it means. This is the town where I left my heart.
We drove back to New Orleans to find out what happened to those who tried to return.
What's wrong, though?
Oh, they just messing all over us.
What are they doing?
Putting you out your own house, knowing we ain't got nowhere to go. You calling back saying we could come back home. Then when we get there, they got the police coming in there putting us out and all this. They harassing us. Oh no, this is not right. I'm basically between here and Texas, coming to see if I could get my house back. And I'm in Texas, but I'm coming down here to see about my house. But they said they ain't letting nobody in and all this. But where we gonna go at though? Where's we gonna go at?
Then they told us to come back.
What happens tonight? Where are you going to go tonight?
That's what I want to know, mister. I don't know where I'm going, me and my kids.
Her friend Patricia Thomas was also locked out of her home in the Lafitte housing project.
They gave us a deadline of when we can go back in Lafitte. That was a miss. They lied.
So they got you out and then they took the place back?
Yeah, but I'm going in there. Watch them. I'll lock them out.
The next day, we helped her break into her apartment, barred by metal plates.
I mean, what happened that you
Well,
left?
I tried to get in a bucket right here. Don't you laugh no more. All the neighbors was laughing at me. And the bucket turned over and I broke up all my teeth.
Well, that's how you lost your teeth.
Yeah, but these my mama teeth here. But her bottom teeth couldn't fit me, so I got her top teeth.
So wait, so you broke your teeth trying to get out from the flood?
Yeah, I sit in the bucket and then I can't swim, so I went under. Then when I tried to come up, I hit my mouth on the approach. They making my yard messed up. This was plants. This was beautiful.
They had the plants here. They had a tree by my porch. If they cut this grass, they're letting this, they're making it look bad. They cut this grass, that's my porch right there. This is my porch right here. And this is my porch here.
The city has sealed up almost all public housing, but these apartments were never touched by water. It was nearly perfect.
I mean, it's been a year.
It's been a year and my house is looking good like that.
I think you and I together, just the two of us, could put your place back together in a week.
You see?
No problem.
No problem at all. None at all. And I don't have no problem with that because then I have somewhere to stay. And you know, this was home for me.
But they won't let her move back in. And it has nothing to do with Katrina.
Katrina didn't do this. Man did this. Katrina didn't come in my house and put these gates up on my windows and things. Katrina didn't have me walking out here looking for somewhere to stay. Man did this. This was man-made.
This is not what we think of as public housing in America. These places are gorgeous, 2- and 3-story townhouses with iron porticos. Why would the city spend thousands of dollars per unit to armor these places, kick out the tenants? Well, the answer may be over here. This is the downtown business district. We are halfway between there and the Tony French Quarter. In other words, this is some very expensive real estate.
For years, the city and speculators have been trying to get the tenants out of these apartments. Katrina, the perfect storm, was the perfect excuse. So what kind of New Orleans do they want?
This is the new Orleans, stripped down, downsized, not too black, just right for tourists. You could call it Six Flags over Louisiana.
They call this drink a hurricane.
But across the Mississippi, far from the quarter, not everyone is thrilled with this brave new Orleans of tourists and Mardi Gras.
It's two cities. You know, it's the city for the white and the rich, and there's another city for the poor and blacks. You know, the city that's for the white and rich is recovered. They had a jazz fest, they had a Mardi Gras. They're going to have the Saints plan for those who have recovered. But for those who haven't recovered, there's nothing.
Malik Rahim is the leader of Common Ground, a grassroots recovery organization. He explains why Patricia and others are locked out of their apartments.
They didn't want to open it up. They wanted them closed. They wanted them pulling niggas out of there. And they ain't had no intention to allow it to be reopened to no poor niggas. You know, and that's just the bottom line.
Malik's group isn't waiting on George Bush to get around to housing the surviving poor.
This is a unit we are getting together for our restaurant. You know, but we're trying to get this together for the economic opportunities that we're trying to offer the community. So.
Common Ground is completing almost as many homes as the Bush administration. But who is left, and who will stay?
This is the lower 9th Ward, or I should say was the lower 9th Ward, an African-American working class neighborhood. There's no potable water here. There's no electricity. There's no nothing. There's just no way to return. And a lot of residents feel that's exactly the plan.
This is Mr. Henry Irving Sr. He has no neighbors, no water, no electricity, but he is not leaving.
They want you to leave. That's what they want us to do. They want us to get discouraged and leave. So why leave? Where I'm going now? I'm gonna go to another community. I put all my life in this community. I'm gonna stay here, and if God's willing, I'm gonna be here long enough to see it come back. And then I'll be able to stand on television and tell a lot of people, I told you so. It's like when they talk about going to war. People say, what you gonna fight for? I don't know but one country. I was born here.
So can it happen again? Another hurricane, another flood? Don't worry, because the government has hired a consulting firm to analyze what went wrong with the response to Katrina. It's a little firm from Baton Rouge called Innovative Emergency Management.
And in Texas right now, it's been just over 1 week since the Guadalupe River rose to historic levels, flooding communities just as they were getting ready to celebrate the 4th of July. At least 129 people have died and 166 are still missing. Kerr County was hit the hardest with at least 103 deaths, including 36 children.
The president has talked about potentially eliminating FEMA, but in Texas, he praised the agency's response.
Some good people running FEMA. It's about time. Right? We get some good ones. They failed us in North Carolina, but when we got in on January 20th, they fixed it up in no time.
Hello, I'm Ethan Lieberman, here to talk with Greg Palast about his film, Big Easy, Big Outie, and what's happening right now in Texas. Hi, Greg. First question that comes to mind, seemed like Professor Heerden put himself on the line for you in that film.
Boy, did he put himself on the line, to say the least. When our film came out on Democracy Now!, he lost his job. The thing is, he was a tenured professor. So to get rid of him, they closed his entire department. Now think about this. They closed the hurricane department of Louisiana State University in the Hurricane Center of America just to get rid of Van Heerden. But what they didn't know is that they picked on the wrong guy, because Van Heerden was an anti-apartheid activist in South Africa. In fact, the way he got to Louisiana, he escaped South Africa by building a boat and sailing across the Atlantic to New Orleans to take that job. And so when they fired him, he didn't sit still. He sued the university and won, got his job back, but then he said, "The hell with America. If you want to drown, I'm getting out of here." Now, how did he lose his department? A company called Chevron went after him, because one of the other things that Van Heerden told me on camera was that the reason New Orleans drowned, ultimately, besides all the other horror shows where they didn't care that the levees were too small, that the Bush administration had been informed before the flood they were going to drown. Van Heerden told me that the problem was that the Gulf of Mexico, sorry, it's not the Gulf of America, that the Gulf of Mexico was 100 miles closer to New Orleans than when the city was founded. Because what happened was the oil companies came in, dragged their barges and equipment through the marshes, and eliminated hundreds of miles of protective mangroves. So that when a storm surge hit, bang, there was nothing between the Gulf of Mexico and New Orleans to stop that massive storm surge. And in other words, the real perpetrator was the oil industry. And so Chevron, to shut him down, because he said, we're going to lose this city again unless you stop the drilling. So Chevron paid for an entirely new department so they could shut down Van Heerden.
So there was a lot in that statement. First of all, the guy packed up and sailed across the Atlantic because he was fed up with our oil companies.
There's more to this story of oil company culpability, And that's why they had to shut him up, because the oil industry did not like going around through the Mississippi, round and round, to get out to the Gulf Coast with their oil. So they created a canal, a straight line from New Orleans, from the Ninth Ward, all the way out to the Gulf. It was called the Mississippi Gulf Outlet, the MIGO. And all that was a hurricane highway, a shotgun right into the heart of New Orleans. Van Heerden and every hurricane expert said, this is a hurricane highway. If there's a storm surge, you just avoided all of the Mississippi, all the mangroves, and that surge, and when it hit, that 9-foot wall of water just knocked down those levees like nothing. Today, that shotgun facing New Orleans has been plugged up. If it had been plugged up as he demanded and requested before the hurricane, that city would still be alive today, and they took him down. And here's the thing. The U.S. federal courts said that the Army Corps of Engineers, the Bush administration, the U.S. government was responsible and had to rebuild those homes in the Ninth Ward. But that requires an act of Congress to fund the court judgment. And Congress defied that court judgment and never rebuilt the Ninth Ward. Now, at the same time, the houses in the Hamptons and West Hamptons, the multi-million-dollar homes, also suffered an Army Corps of Engineers wipeout. And there, the U.S. government rebuilt the multi-million-dollar homes of the investment bankers and movie stars in the Hamptons, while they gave the finger to the black folks of the Ninth Ward.
Just like when the markets crash in 08, who gets a bailout but the banks?
Yeah, and we're talking literally a life raft.
Rahim Malik, what happened? Where's his story at?
Well, that was a very uplifting story we had of Malik and the people of the Algiers neighborhood taking that old building, rebuilding it, remodeling it, creating stores for their community. It was one of the great heartwarming stories. And then when the cameras were off, after we left, Malik, Rahim, and his entire crew and all the residents there were kicked out. And the landlord said, thank you so much for spending millions of dollars and putting in hundreds of thousands of hours of your volunteer time. It's my building now. Get the hell out. And he did that days before Christmas, just to add a little bit.
Another time when it seemed like the people in charge were just trying to rub it in was when they titled the FEMA relief village Renaissance Village, as if people were going through a cultural revolution staying in that trailer park.
And I got to tell you that one of the things that happened is because we filmed at Renaissance Village, the FEMA basically prison camp for the and almost entirely black survivors of Katrina. I was charged and about to be arrested by Homeland Security because they said I was filming critical infrastructure. That is the Exxon refinery. I was a half a mile away from the Exxon refinery, just filming the filth that was coming out of those smokestacks, that those people in that FEMA park in those disgusting trailers were sucking up those fumes. So the real crime, when Homeland Security tried to arrest me, they said, this is really serious. We've had, terrorists could have used your film to find out where the Exxon refinery is. I said, well, have you ever seen Google Earth? They could give you the exact coordinates. What they didn't want was the film of the poisoning of these refugees from Katrina. I was able to get out of the arrest the way I know how, which is I screamed bloody murder. So that's why I'm not wearing an orange suit in Guantanamo.
And how about the fate of one of the most notable refugees from the film, Patricia?
Patricia passed away. She had no place, and which often happens with people who are homeless. Now, she was only homeless by government decree. Remember, we went into her house. It was in perfect condition because those beautiful Lafitte homes were on high ground. So they didn't spend the money knocking down the destroyed buildings. Instead, they literally, within short order, tore down the Lafitte homes, tore down Patricia's homes so that they could do exactly what we predicted, that they were turning this into a luxury development to make sure that there was a continuous barrier of upper middle class homes between downtown and the French Quarter. And so Patricia, homeless, brokenhearted, died.
There was a man behind the scenes, as I understand it. Art King Miller, the Rex, the king of Mardi Gras.
Yeah, we think of Mardi Gras as this cute little operation where they throw beads at you and everyone gets drunk. No, these are secret societies. And the king of Mardi Gras, who was Rex Miller at the time, he was the lawyer for Chevron. He was the lawyer for the oil companies, and he's the guy who wrote the check to get rid of Professor Von Heerden. So he's the front man for the oil industry. He also was king of Mardi Gras, which is a very powerful position in the secret societies of the city. And this is the guy who's been defending the oil industry's destruction of the coast. And so this is the money behind the destruction of the coast. And this is a guy I want you to meet. And so what I did was I went to go meet him and have a little interview and ask him about the money he put behind making sure that Von Heerden and the Hurricane Center were closed and the oil industry could keep marauding the mangroves. And when he realized that I had the goods on him and I showed him the secret documents of his secret funding on behalf of Chevron, he took my microphone, slammed it down on the table, and threw me out of his office. I was never so happy to be excluded.
So before Big Oil, were there any bayous?
No, people don't realize this was called swamp prairie. Believe it or not, Louisiana was the #1 cattle raising area in America, not Texas, but it was this swampy grassland. And when they dragged the oil barges and laid the pipes through that marsh, the water in those man-made canals just started expanding. And that's what we know as the beautiful blue bios. What you're seeing is absolute environmental destruction, bringing the salt water of the Gulf right up to New Orleans and just literally eating the state of Louisiana alive. So when you look at those nice, pretty pictures of the bayous, just remember what you're looking at is destruction.
What Baggett was singing about his rendition, a very somber rendition of Jambalaya.
So Broad Baggett was, by the way, city councilman who sang Jambalaya. He put it in a minor key. And he and his family ultimately had to leave because they were literally just so heartbroken to see what happened to their city. And that house that he was in, he lost it.
You had a statement in your book, Vulture's Picnic, about the performative cleanup the oil companies had people doing after disasters, I should say. Do you think we're going to see that in Texas?
They've done about 500 yards in a month, and they only have the rest of this beach and another 600 miles to go. And then they got to do it again.
Yeah, look, they're not increasing budgets, they're cutting the budgets. Donald Trump and Musk were saying, oh, we're returning emergency management response to the state. What they mean is they're not going to give them any more damn money to do the work. It's on you, baby. So, hey, Texans, you chose this guy. Now, write the check, because you ain't getting it from Washington.
And at that, they're cutting billions of dollars in grants to the states themselves.
Yeah, so let's talk about FEMA. Okay, you know, Brod Baggert, by the way, is a great trial attorney. And when he was talking about criminal negligence, how about this for criminal negligence? Just months before the drowning of the people in Kerr County, Texas, with a flash flood, DOGE, Mr. DOGE style, Mr. Musk, and his enabler, Agent Orange, I think he's called Trump, they eliminated the position with FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. They eliminated the position of Texas Emergency Response Coordinator with FEMA and the Weather Service. They eliminated the person who was in charge of warning people that they were going to drown. And because they said, oh, well, we're just eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse. Tell me exactly what is so wasteful or fraudulent or abusive about the guy who is a meteorologist in charge of informing people, get the hell to high ground. And just in case someone might survive, even losing the coordinator, they are now eliminating, in Trump's new big, beautiful bill, they're eliminating a fourth of the gauges that are supposed to float in the water and signal when that water is rising. So you're on your own, my friends. This is what they are doing. And what Brod Baggert called criminal negligence, it is now criminal negligence with forethought. We call that. I used to work for the Justice Department, Ethan. In the days when I was with the Justice Department, when it believed in justice, these people would be cuffed, read their rights, and locked away for one very long time.
They've also cut the budgets for weather-resistant and emergency-proof infrastructure. Does that harken back to those levees that were just a foot and a half too short, blocking off many residents of Louisiana?
Look, they know it. When you take away the gauges, well, let me tell you, they're actually cutting the number of satellites that also help us warn when there is a surge. They've cut over almost all 10 of the research offices for flood warnings from the Weather Service. You can't blind yourself and say, gee, we didn't see this coming, because we deliberately blinded our agencies. This is cruelty. And you know something? Americans have been buying this garbage that the government is your enemy. And then what happens is, when a tragedy happens, when a disaster happens, they say, well, where was the government? It's the government you eliminated. You drown the government, and guess what happens next? Your kids drown. I mean, I would not want anyone to lose their child. I could not survive it if I lost my kids, but my God, I wouldn't vote to drown them. And that's what people did. Let's be very straight and very honest about this. We talk about the fancy word infrastructure. We're talking about the instruments to save your life.
Seems like the only satellites that Musk is willing to tolerate are his own, huh?
Yeah, because if he's not getting the contract now, according to Trump, hey.
So Trump's been working to decrease, get rid of, eliminate FEMA.
He's literally said FEMA has to go. And his idea is to obviously eliminate the agency. So if there's no Federal Emergency Management Agency, guess what happens? There's no emergency that's going to be managed by your federal government. Now, the alternative, of course, is that he's going to, quote, privatize. Get the private sector in. Well, let me tell you, privatization was at the heart of the drowning of New Orleans. As you saw in Big Easy to Big Empty, innovative emergency management, so they privatized the emergency planning, taking it away from the government agency and Louisiana State University. And so they had no plan for people who didn't have cars to leave. 3,000 people died, as Van Heerden said. We could have saved their lives. And the same thing, when you privatize FEMA and you turn hurricanes, disasters, floods, terrorist attacks, earthquakes, wildfires into profit centers, people are going to die, because we saw that in New Orleans when they privatized the emergency planning. And if they're going to they're going to take that IEM non-management and they're going to bring it to Texas and they're going to bring it to California and they're going to bring it to a hometown on fire near you. So that's what privatization means. And then they're going to make money on the cleanup. And then they're going to make money on selling out your wet real estate from under you. That's what happened in New Orleans. Those people from the Ninth Ward never came back. They never came back.
Funny enough, IEM proudly boasts on their website, we're working with DOGE.
Yes, and so IEM is working with DOGE, but you never really know because the way that IEM got their contract for New Orleans was that they claimed in a press release that they used the former FEMA administrator, DeWitt, who was a legend in hurricane preparedness planning. And they said he was on their team. When I spoke to DeWitt, he said, I never heard of these guys. And that's what happens, because when you privatize government, you don't eliminate abuse, waste, and fraud. You make waste, fraud, and abuse profitable. And that's what happened with New Orleans. So 3,000 people drowned. And we have to understand, this is not the past. I was just talking with a small town mayor. He's actually the president of the Board of Supervisors of a little town called Villa Park, west side of Chicago. And he is panicked because they are eliminating over $3 billion in money for small towns to plan for emergencies. I was talking to this town president, and frankly, he burst into tears when he talked about what could happen to his town.
Why does he feel that so deeply?
Here's why. The man was career military in the Coast Guard. His unit was the first sent into the Gulf Coast. And he said that after Katrina, right after he pulled into Biloxi with the Coast Guard, he spent his days pulling the bloated bodies of dead pregnant women out of the water, pulling the bodies of children out of the water. And he says he never wants to see that again.
We would take Vicks Vapor Rub and just stick it in our nose. And the reason why we did that was to mask the smell. You could only imagine what it would smell like for a body to be in the water for days, decaying, raw sewage in the water, fuel, diesel, everywhere in the water, debris. And when it came time to recover these bodies, I never really had any real experience, very little training on hazmat suits and what it's like to don this equipment and actually pull a person out of the water that was deceased. And this individual in particular, when we were assisting pulling them out of the water, I had grabbed a portion of their arm to try to pull up, and person's arm just slid off, kind of like a chicken wing, like it just came right off. And then with the divers and the rest of the crew pulling it up and then making sure that we get them in a body bag, wearing the suits, and then the constant reminder of the smell of the Vicks Vapor Rub with everything else are one of the lasting memories that I have. Katrina.
He has to worry, for example, he's got trains with toxic material running through his town. And I know that you had Donald Trump during the campaign scream about the toxic train derailment, but now he's literally taking away the money to plan in case there's another damn derailment. This guy has to worry about that. And where is the money? Where's the expertise? Who does he call? Before, he could call FEMA. FEMA under Obama, and then especially under Biden, was restored as a technically competent agency. And now that agency is literally being washed away by Kristi Noem, who spent her time posting pictures of herself and saying, which one of me is prettier to put on our site, while people are drowning in Texas. The new head of FEMA is not the professionals that Biden had put in, but rather this guy Richardson, who did not know, he admitted he did not know that America had a hurricane season. This guy's supposed to protect us from hurricanes. Okay, so now we have to understand what's going on. People are drowning in Texas, but that flood's coming to your town. And I'm telling you right now, this is premeditated death. When they talk about eliminating waste and abuse, when they don't have a plan to protect your kids. Now, I personally worked on emergency preparedness, nuclear plant evacuations. Let me tell you something. If there's no FEMA, if there's no plan, and you have a meltdown in a nuclear plant, do you really want your kids' skin to fall off in front of your eyes? That's what happens. That's what will happen. Ask the people of Fukushima, who thought they had the best plans in the world. We don't. This is dangerous.
How could people get more information if they're curious?
Well, I hope you are curious, because it's your life on the line. I hope you're scared. So number one, I want you to spread the word about this film. Send out the link, like right now. Like this film. Get it out to your lists and socials. If you want to show the film, you can. We have DVDs. Make a donation. I'll sign a DVD to you because we need your support and funds to keep this investigation going. No one pays our team to do this. We only do it through the donations to our not-for-profit, nonpartisan foundation. Go to gregpalast.com. Make your tax-deductible donation. I'll sign a disc, Big Easy to Big Empty, to you. The other is read the book. There are two books. There's Armed Madhouse, which will give you the story of the drowning of New Orleans, and the information, the real story of the wrecks. You can see that and in the interactive version of my book, Vulture's Picnic, or read the book. You're still allowed to read until Patriot Act 4. Read the book, Vulture's Picnic. Most important, sign up for my investigative reports on my Substack or at gregpalast.com. Join us in this work. Your life is at stake. Thank you.